Now it's time to welcome on stage Mr. Clarke, who is Chief Creative Officer at DigitasLBi.
So, just to give you a little sort of heads up on what I'm talking about here, as you may know from the title, I'm talking about the death of empathy, which sounds like a big and scary challenge. Over the past sort of 25, 30 years, marketing has developed in a sort of globalized world, an increasingly globalizing world. And of course the internet and digital technology accelerated that trend. During that period of time, we had a kind of almost like a global liberal consensus, politically and socially, which of course helped to build these global brands. You can build a completely global, consistent brand if you have a more or less global consensus around the centre ground. So a lot of the big brands that we've seen really kind of take over over the last sort of 25, 30 years have been built on that basis. But to quote Yates, in recent years we've discovered that the centre cannot hold. There are people and constituencies around the world who've been left behind by globalisation, who haven't perhaps felt its benefits as much as other groups. And as a result of that, we have now the rise of populism. It's given us Trump in the US, it's given us horribly Brexit in the UK, and perhaps even more horribly the phenomenon of Erdogan grabbing power in Turkey, more closely to him. So these are big, big social changes, and if we're concerned with marketing, selling product to people, developing brands and products that live in society, then we need to be concerned with this issue. We can't pretend it's not there. And I think it fundamentally changes the way that brands need to communicate. So, is this working yet? So where did it all start? There's a fantastic book that I recommend to you by a guy called Thomas Friedman called Thank You for Being Late. There's nobody being late at the moment. I was hoping to make a joke about people being late at that point. This book is a fantastic digest of people perhaps with less expertise than those of us in the room to explain where we are at the moment in terms of the acceleration of culture caused by digital change. He illustrates the point really well in the book. This, in the year 2000, this picture here, this was the biggest computer in the world. It was called Big Red, and it was about the size of an advertising agency, much bigger than this room. That was in the year 2000. 6 years later, the same processing power was available on the PS3 that you get in your room, in your house, and now it's available in your pocket on the iPhone. You guys all know this. Since 2007, with the development of the iPhone and then the open platform that allowed people to create apps on top of it, and the acceleration, again, in processing power and Moore's Law and all these good things that you know about, the collapse in price of processing power of microchips and increase in capacity, we've had a kind of explosion of activity and change and development. And what Friedman says in the book, and I completely agree, is that it's now impossible for any one person or even any one organisation to know what the fuck is going on. It is deeply, deeply, deeply confusing for people, the pace of change. It's impossible for us to understand the impact, and it's impossible for governments to keep up, for legislation to keep up. And we've had, I guess, a growth of massive kind of digital businesses that have disrupted whole industries. Is it going to work? There we go. So it's just too fast. This is just, I googled going way too fast, and this wonderful GIF came up. That's a sloth on a boat. And I guess a lot of us at the moment, even those of us who've been involved in building all of this stuff, in building this digital future, I've been working on it since the late 90s. I feel like this now. I have absolutely no way of coping with the level of change. And it all kind of began with this mission. Is anybody in here who's read the Clue Train Manifesto? Only a few years ago, everybody would have put their hands up. So this really was the beginning. This was the Bible for disruption. This was the big polemic, talking about how digital disruption was going to take over the world. And those of us who read it at the time were incredibly excited about it. We felt that these nasty old legacy industries deserved to be disrupted. And I guess the other part of our religion at the time was this idea that information wants to be free, the notion of free content online. Now, I've come to a completely different point of view on all of this in recent years. Of course, industrial disruption is good, okay, and it creates a great opportunity. The problem that we've got at the moment socially is that the disrupted industries have not really been replaced in terms of jobs. You now have a challenge that The Economist describes as premature deindustrialization, which is a really horrible word, but it describes the challenge that a country like India has, for example. China could take people out of the fields and put them in factories. Now, the factories are operated by machines and apps. So you have to take people out of the fields and put them into software development, which is a much, much bigger leap. So that's causing huge challenges with new countries trying to keep up. And some of those challenges, I'm sure, exist in Bulgaria to an extent as well. So that's a challenge. The other thing that occurred to me as well is I remember back in 2012 when Instagram was bought by Facebook for $1 billion. That was also the year that Kodak went bust. Now Kodak was the custodian of our memories, right? When we were kids, when we were growing up, and now it's Instagram. When Kodak was the custodian of our memories, it employed around 300,000 people around the world, and it made revenues of 3 or 4 billion a year. And of course that revenue was distributed into the pay packets of all of those people. And of course there were then millions of people associated in little booths where you could go and collect your photographs and so on. When Facebook was bought for when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion, Instagram had 13 employees and made revenues of 0. So you can see that there are some major challenges in terms of value destruction as well as value creation when it comes to digital disruption. And these are really, really important things to consider. So I'm somebody who's loved the internet and loved technology from the beginning. But what I guess I'm saying is that we need to be careful and measured and think about the impacts of our work if we are to advise brands on the right way to operate in this space. So there we go, that's Kodak dying. I think the next point, and I always make this when I talk, is that still I keep hearing at events like this, people cheerleading for the internet and digital technology, talking about how fantastic it is because the consumer is now in control. This, of course, is utter rubbish. Is there anybody in this room who checks their phone regularly throughout the day and last thing at night, and when they should be playing with their kids, and when they're watching a movie, or trying to read a book, or trying to do a presentation? This took me so much longer than it would have done a few years ago because I keep compulsively checking Facebook. Now, of course, the reason why that is happening is that we are all dopamine addicts. We have inbuilt addiction centers in our brain, in the frontal cortex, particularly sensitive when we're teenagers. And so particularly, this is why we try and tell kids to avoid drinking alcohol until they're 18, smoking dope, all that stuff. Doesn't really work, didn't work on me anyway. Now, I've worked in this industry, as I said from the beginning, and we create platforms and services, software and design to gain the dopamine reward path in your brain. That's how it has always worked. We used to talk about keeping websites sticky, but what we mean is making them addictive. And social media in particular, and I think the best at it in terms of gaming the teenage dopamine reward path is probably Snapchat, is that there's an addiction mechanism being played with here. So the consumer is not in control at all. The consumer is being controlled. And in fact, now with social media and the major global platforms of Google, Facebook, etc., what we now have is perhaps the best system of population control ever invented. People like to talk about the Arab Spring as being a wonderful moment of Facebook and social media giving rise to great rebellion. Didn't exactly end well, did it? Because even though Facebook is quite good and social media is quite good for helping us organise ourselves, it's in the case of Iran, for example, it's pretty rubbish at coming up with an alternative to a theocratic state. Because people aren't thinking deeply about issues. They're liking, passing on information, getting that quick dopamine reward, and then moving on. So these are challenges that we face. And of course, we now know that we live in filter bubbles. I guess everyone here has heard the term filter bubble. Do I need to explain it? Yes, no, some. Okay, so the filter bubble ultimately is the fact that most of the platforms that you consume your information on are tailored absolutely to you. So you have very little idea of what people who are not like you are reading and experiencing. This is how it was a surprise in the UK to many of us in the liberal elite that Brexit happened. And it was a great surprise to many people that Trump happened. Because the build-up to these major world-shaking events is happening in somebody else's bubble. And that's a massive, massive challenge. And again, if you think about bringing it back to marketing, we're now living in a world where it must be impossible, therefore, to address everybody with one campaign idea globally, because each filter bubble is unique. And that's presenting us with some major, major challenges. So this is if you ever tried looking at, find someone very different from you, like your grandparents or something, do the same search on their computer and on yours, and you'll find radically different results. It's kind of interesting. And as Eric Schmidt once said, it will be very hard for people to watch or consume something that has not, in some sense, been tailored for them. So this is Eric Schmidt from Google. So it's getting to the point where we just simply will not understand messages that aren't directly tailored and targeted at us. And this is not necessarily because we're bad people. I mean, yes, the dopamine warpath in our brain is being gained. But if you think about the speed at which we're now operating, and the pace of change, the idea of a generation, which was 25 years, many thinkers are now saying that a generation in terms of complete change of media environment and understanding and way of engaging with the world is now happening roughly every 7 years. There's almost a different generation every 7 years. So this has massive challenges again for marketeers. And so the like is ultimately the currency of where we're at. When you're moving that fast, it's very difficult to think more deeply than do I like it, do I not like it? And we're becoming addicted to messages that make us feel good. As Mark Zuckerberg said, a squirrel dying in front of your house may be more relevant to your interests right now than people dying in Africa. It's a fairly terrifying statement. Or you could summarise it like this: it's a fantastic gift. That's what happens when you Google, nobody gives a shit, you get that wonderful gift. So the internet's still fantastic for many things, of course. Now, the really nasty side of what's happening at the moment, and I hope not too many of you have heard about this, but you may well have read about it, is that the Trump phenomenon and the Brexit phenomenon owe a large part of their success to a company called Cambridge Analytica, which is a British company, originally it's a British-American company. They started out in psychological ops in Afghanistan, targeting a Taliban enemy, and they then moved to doing free personality tests on Facebook. Has anybody ever done one of those free personality tests on Facebook? Tells you like what your personality type is like. You get a kind of little profile like this. This is not me. Okay. Now, as a result of that, Cambridge Analytica were able to build a psychological profile of every single voter in the United States. And then the Trump campaign used that information to gain in the end, it was only 40,000 votes across a few swing states that got that guy into power. So, for example, the way that it would work is pro-gun is obviously a big Republican issue. If you're an open, sociable sort of person, your pro-gun ownership message would say, your granddaddy took you hunting, don't let them stop you taking your grandson out hunting. Or if you were a closed, sort of paranoid type of person, it would be the enemies at the door, a picture of a sort of scary-looking guy with a gun. Same issue, very different ways of spreading the message. Now this is happening on a kind of hyper-targeted level throughout the US. It was also used in Brexit. And if you add to that the phenomenon of fake news, again something that's happened as a result of the fact that information wants to be free. So information is free to be completely made up. So kids in Macedonia can make websites that generate huge amounts of revenue and of course help the Trump campaign. Absolutely terrifying. By the way, this is the guy who funds Cambridge Analytica, an evil billionaire called Mercer. So there are people like this with large amounts of cash that are sitting behind the internet. So if you think that the internet is somehow a force of democracy or an open, free platform, think again, because there's huge amounts of money going into kind of gaming the way that people use technology and the way that people consume information. And that is how we got to this guy. I just had to put that in there. Such a beautiful image. So, if you really want something scary, Oh, can you read that right there? Difficult to read, I think. Anyway, this is an incredibly scary quote that Carl Sagan wrote in 1993. Science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking. I have a foreboding of an America in my children or grandchildren's time when the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the key manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of the very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good, like, and what's true, we slide almost without noticing back into superstition and darkness. Now, that really freaked me out when I read that, because it sounds like an exact description of kind of where America is at politically at the moment and where the UK is at. And again, when social media becomes your only source of information, and where it's targeted at making you feel good, and where nobody gives a damn whether the information is real or fake, then you get into a terrifying situation. It is like superstition. It's not about reality. It's about the way that we, it's this idea that Nias Nin said, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. And that is now hyper true. So, or to quote Yeats, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, the blood-dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Now, I'm aware it's starting to get a little bit depressing at this point, but I call myself a cheerful dystopian, so I'm going to bring it back a little bit. Now, the really exciting thing that's happened at the moment is that historically, having worked in advertising for about 20 years, historically brands were kind of like the prostitute in a kind of film. I'm whatever you want me to be, baby. And they would kind of, occupy a kind of centre ground and not really stand for anything. Because to make a stand would be to alienate part of the audience. But what's happened now with the massive bifurcation of audiences, you have people moving to extreme positions, is it's quite difficult to mean anything to anybody if you occupy that sort of middle space, because it's kind of disappeared at the moment. And so what we saw with Trump's Muslim ban when he first came into power was brands standing up to be counted. Now I'm one of a few 100,000 people that deleted Uber on that day, because Uber showed themselves to be, I guess morally somewhat lacking, in that they introduced surge pricing and tried to benefit from the chaos at airports on the day of the Muslim ban. Lyft, of course, who unfortunately aren't in the UK yet, but will be soon, stepped in and offered free rides to people who were stranded. Airbnb, of course, offered accommodation to people who were stranded. Starbucks offered to employ 10,000 immigrants. Google and Periscope all did their bit too. So I think that's the first time that we've seen that. We also saw in the Super Bowl ads, brands, like stalwart American brands like Budweiser, standing up to be counted, risking alienating a large part of the audience, and effectively saying that money is less important than values, which is unique. I've never seen it in my life. So I think there's an opportunity here for big brands to perhaps start to make an impact. And one of the things that occurred to me very recently, of course, is that the internet that we use is ad-funded. Google and Facebook don't exist without the advertising dollars that my clients and other people's clients spend on those platforms. So I think that's a very interesting thing to think about, because of course if you then don't like the way in which the internet is configured, the way in which it's working, the way information is spreading, and the way that's perhaps representing your brand, you've probably got a chance to do something about it. And indeed Facebook and Google and many organisations are now looking at that, because all of these things that I'm describing are not, apart from in the case of Mercer and Cambridge Analytica, they're not really inspired by any kind of evil genius behind the scenes. It's the unintended consequences of free information on the internet and the spread of digital technology in our times. So this stuff's only existed, like really the internet that we know at the moment has only existed since 2007 with the invention of the iPhone. Facebook's younger than that, so it is eminently possible to change some of these things. These are not the laws of physics, they are the laws of men and machines. Now, The other great positive thing, of course, is that people are reacting to this age of superstition that's starting to happen. I think this is fantastic here. Society should worry when geeks have to demonstrate. I think that's really good. And this other one here, got the plague, me neither, thanks science. But it's interesting when you see the rise of populism and the kind of anger that is coming from relatively well-off and comfortable people in some cases in America and the UK. It gets you thinking. There's another book I can recommend by a guy called Yuval Noah Harari. And the book is called Homo Deus. And it's about the rise of the robots. And he wrote a book called Sapiens last year that's absolutely fantastic about the rise of the human race over the last 70,000 years. This is about the move towards us becoming cyborgs. Quite a terrifying book, but as he says in the book, it's no use asking somebody to be grateful for the fact they didn't die of smallpox and there hasn't been a third world war when they've lost their job in a Rust Belt factory. So people don't know they haven't been killed by something. They're not grateful for the benefits of globalization, and they see emerging markets taking their jobs, and they're angry. So politics has changed. So what does that mean for advertising? Well, I better bring it back to something to do with branding. But what we've been doing as an agency is really kind of looking at how you can dimensionalize the way in which you address audiences, because it's no longer okay to do the same kind of work to the same kind of target audience. You may have 5 or 6 target audiences, you may have 12 different personality types that you're tackling. So when we launched the Nissan Micra last year, we developed a whole range of different work. This was stuff basically for very kind of insight and detail-driven people. It was a 3D module that allowed you to explore the car and go into great detail via an app on your phone. And then the next piece was this piece of film.
Right back for me, my new car video. 600 million views. I'm so famous now. The Lisa saw my video and got me the brand new Nissan Micra.
This is the weirdest car ad you'll ever see. This is PewDiePie, by the way, for those of you who don't know, the biggest YouTuber.
It's got a registration. Hey, you like gas? Just put that in there. No, it's got wheels. Or goes all the way around. Just like I'll take you around the world, baby. On this Nissan Micra. You want to be able to see at night when you drive? It got lights. LED. It's a sporty car. Sporty body! Sporty body! It's gentle. Despite the aggressive lines. I think I'm stuck. I'm stuck. Help! Help me, I'm stuck! The truck is humongous. I don't want to do it. Alright.
So that's enough of that. Now before we play this video, I'll just explain what's going on there. That is the weirdest thing I've ever been involved with. At the time, it was probably the biggest coup of my career, of our career as an agency, to get this, because he doesn't do commercial stuff very often. We managed to get him once by sending him a PlayStation controller and a birthday cake, and he did a bit about PlayStation for us. And this time we managed to get him to do that whole film. We were thrilled, we were excited, 7 million people saw it in 2 or 3 days, and then it turned out that he's a Nazi. Yeah, that was a little bit of a challenge. So shortly after we had this amazing result with him, and I managed to introduce the Nissan Micra to a youthful audience around the world in a radically different way from all the rest of the campaign that we'd done. And the client had been so brave to release that film, which frankly, if you're not in PewDiePie's audience group, you're going to find a bit weird. And he goes on to have a race with his manga Japanese girlfriend, who's a cushion, who was in another car. I mean, it's just, it's weird. Anyway. Yeah, and then it turned out that he wanted to make a point about people will do anything on the internet, and he got a bunch of guys in India to jump up and down with Hitler was right written on their chest. Now, we thought that was a really bad, sick joke done by a kind of gamer kid initially. We were giving him the benefit of the doubt, and then the Washington Post took the time to go through all of his videos since the beginning of time, and it turns out that he is just a touch on the right-wing side of things. So he is part of that outright movement that's coming up. And a lot of kids are interested in his message, because these days the liberal elite, it co-opted rock and roll and right on and left-wing thinking. And now if you want to be renegade, you go in this direction. So it's terrifying. So of course we pulled the video and we moved on. But still, the client recognises it's still part of having to explore these new audiences, find radical new ways to appeal to different audiences, and to dare to be different, and to dare to try new things. Now, again, I'm going to show you, the final thing I'm going to show you is another completely different piece, targeted more at the kind of tech-aware audience for Nissan Micra. And the idea here is that the lines of this new car are unforgettable. And so we did a project with a guy called Stephen Wilshire. Oops, no, we don't do that. We go back. Can you play that video? Can you play the video?
My brother Stephen has the ability to replicate cityscapes, buildings, cars, almost to perfection. He has a photographic memory. Stephen is not able to filter anything. He absorbs everything. Detail is the highlight to his drawing. Today he has a challenge, not with pen and paper, but using tools that he's never used before.
It's an interesting point he makes there. It's easier to remember things that they find interesting. I hope you found some of this interesting today. I don't want to leave you on a downer. I genuinely think that there's a fantastic opportunity if we think in the right way about how the internet is configured, if we question it, if we don't just pretend that the customer is in control, if we don't just pretend that it's all about democracy and love and people with no shoes walking to the office and having dogs in the office. If we recognise some of the darker sides to what we're building, then of course we can change it and we can make it better. And I think brands have a fantastic role to play in that. Thank you very much for your time.